من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه نحمد الله سبحانه وتعالى الذي جمعنا لمجلسنا هذا اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم اللهم أمتنا على السنة والجماعة اللهم أحينا وأمتنا على السنة والجماعة اللهم إن محياي ومماتي ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين إن حياتي ومماتي ومحياي كله لله رب العالمين. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal, in order for us to get through this world, there's only one way to get through the world. And the key is the phrase, the sunnah and the jama'ah. The Prophet ﷺ, when he was asked about the hard times, he gave two pieces of advice. Stick to my sunnah and stick to the jama'ah. In another narration, he said, stick to the book of Allah and to my sunnah. And in a third narration, stick to the book of Allah and to my family. Okay? When we say the sunnah, obviously no one's going to be following sunnah and not following Quran, right? So Quran and sunnah go hand in hand. And we follow the jama'ah with a special emphasis upon Ahlul Bayt. You have to love Ahlul Bayt. If you love Ahlul Bayt in your family, that means like stories of Ali, Fatima, Hassan and Hussein, and you love them in your family and your community, it's really an additional special padding to your guidance, okay? And what we have to do is live and die basically as a gang. In order to keep, everything's gangs. The whole world is gangs. It used to be tribes, right? It descended a little bit, it got bad, right? And they have gangs. That's what it is. A gang to protect one another from falling off the path. That's what we have to do, right? You gotta be a gang. It's not an easy world out there. Every movie that you see, wallahi, if they made a movie about forks and spoons, one of them is gonna be gay. Every single movie, they have to put a gay reference. And some people say, they get fooled because they'll put a gay reference, then they'll put someone who makes fun of it, right? A character who makes fun of it. It doesn't matter, it got in your head, right? They put both to look like it's balanced. It's not balanced, it shouldn't be in there in the first place, right? It's not something that we believe should be there in the first place, okay? So everything has a gay reference, subhanAllah. Everything, they're gonna refer to it somehow, it's gonna get in your head. So we need to constantly be protecting ourselves, and we're going to do so by togetherness, right? Jama'ah, protective togetherness. No one should be upsetting anyone. Anyone who upsets someone, immediately apologize and it wipes it away. And no one should be holding a grudge against anyone else. The path of pure hearts is what we need, to have pure hearts. It's an amazing thing. There is a certain type of star. If you look at it, you can't see it. But if you look next to it, you can see it. This is a unique thing. You maybe experienced this. Very few people see stars in the first place nowadays because there's so much light out. But back in the day, when there were stars, you look at a star and you see a very faint star here. But then when you go to look at that star, you don't see it anymore. Certain ni'am, the Prophet ﷺ said to Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha, there are certain blessings. If you don't look at them, it'll stay. One time, Sayyidah Aisha, she had bread. She was making bread. And the Prophet ﷺ said, how much bread is there? She said, let me look. She looked, and she said, there's bread for one day. The Prophet ﷺ said, if you had not looked at it, it could last you until your death. Another example, They say that if there is food in the pot and you fear that there are too many guests, okay? Because on the one, there are two sunnahs. There are two sunnahs that conflict with one another. It appears that they conflict, but Allah gives us an outlet. The first sunnah is you do not invite guests when you have nothing to give them, right? You don't marry when you don't have any food to feed your wife. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Man istata'a minkumul ba'a falyatazawwaj." If you can handle the responsibility, then get married. So if you cannot feed people or have a guest, don't invite him. You invite him to be hungry, okay? Then he gets upset. But then we have another example that if someone requests to come, we never turn them away, right? Another example. And it's makruh, it's frowned upon, except for the Prophet ﷺ, because he knew what he was doing in one instance, to, let's say, someone invites me, I go to their house, okay, and I say, you know what, let me bring the whole class with me. Right? Only the Prophet did that in a certain situation. He knew what he was doing. And I'm not speaking about anything. Yesterday there was a great thing, but we didn't, this has nothing to do with that, right? This is just totally coincidence, okay? But in invitations, these are the sunnahs. The Prophet ﷺ then gave us an outlet. If you fear that the food's not going to last, then what do? We recite upon it Surah Quraysh. لإيلاف قريش إيلافهم رحلة الشتاء والصيف. Right? فَلْيَعْبُدُوا رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ. They worship this Lord of this house. الَّذِي أَطْعَمَهُم مِّن جُوعٍ. He fed them from hunger. وَآمَنَهُم مِّن خَوْفٍ. And He kept them from fear, safe from fear. Recite that while pouring the food without looking at the pot. Without looking in and saying, oh, how much left? How much is left? How much is left? Do not look at the pot. Okay? Now, just as an interesting coincidence, really, not a coincidence, but an interesting parallel. There were these scientists, they were doing an experiment. And they found that the behavior, they were looking at the behavior of certain particles. Okay? Particles. So the particles were going and splitting, okay? They were splitting. They noticed the particles are splitting or going in different directions. So then when they noticed that and they started to observe it, it stopped happening, right? It stopped happening. What does that show us? Somehow our gaze upon something, that thing reacts to us. And whenever we look at something, we ruin it, right? Whenever you put your gaze upon something, you ruin it, right? It stops behaving the way we think it is. So someone who's sitting looking for a miracle will never see one. But someone who is focusing on something higher than that will see one, right? So the Prophet ﷺ said, recite Surah Quraysh on the food and pour from it, imagining that it has no end to the pot, there's no bottom to the pot, and there's no limit, without looking at the food. Okay, don't keep looking at the pot and wondering how much left, how much is not left, right? Then it will last for everyone. This is how the Prophet ﷺ did it when he went to a Sahabi's house while they were digging the Khandaq. The wife of the man, she said to the Ansari man, she said to her husband, the Prophet looks so tired, tell him I have cut for him, slaughtered for him a lamb, okay? Or part of a lamb. So he ran and whispered to the ear of the Prophet, when you're finished digging, when it gets dark and you're not digging anymore, come and we have some lamb. So they all prayed Maghrib. Then the man went home to prepare. He prayed Maghrib in his house. He prepared. Okay? Then he looks out the door waiting for the Prophet. And what does he see? The entire army is coming. He ran inside the house in a panic. And he said, do you have any other food? She said, no, why? He said, because the whole army is coming. And she said, did you invite them? And he said, no. He said, then who told them? He said, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then she said, if Rasulullah brought them, then he knows what he's doing. Everything's going to be fine. This is the iman of the Ansari women. The iman of the Ansari women. They're not counting pennies. Okay? So when the Prophet ﷺ came, and there were too many people for the house. So they would come in 10 in the house only fit 10 people. And they would eat, and the Prophet would bless the food, okay? Then they would leave. And they didn't have a siraj, which is a light. They didn't have a light. So no one sees what's in the pot, right? If you're looking to wait for a miracle to happen, it's not gonna happen. It's not a game that works like that, okay? So then 10 leave and 10 come up until everyone ate from the food, okay? Now, if you want to attain a goal, Tasawwuf is telling us you can attain a lot if your gaze is only on Allah Azza wa Jal. But if you keep looking at your phenomenon and thinking about it, you may be the cause of its own destruction. So our goal is to get through this life soundly, where our Iman is under siege, our Islam is constantly under siege, with temptations, good things and bad things. We want to get through it. The way to succeed is to keep your eye on Allah Azza wa Jal. Your goal is to be with Allah Azza wa Jal. If you start looking, mashallah, I succeeded 1 month, I succeeded for 2 years. This is no good. You're going to falter. You're going to falter because your eye is not on the road anymore. Your eye is on the rear view mirror. If you're driving on the highway, you cannot look in the rear view mirror or else you're going to crash. So people crash when they start looking at themselves. You can't drive and start looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, oh, is my makeup looking good? You're going to crash, right? You're going to crash. So don't look at your situation. Just look at your work. And speaking of work, this is why I send everyone a spiritual action chart. All right? Spiritual action chart. We have to practice what we're doing here. We did 6 chapters, right? 6 chapters, and I've put them in 5 practices. First one is ilm. Every day, there should be something of ilm. And the avenues for ilm are so many. There's no limit. Right? The avenues of ilm, podcasts. There's podcasts. When you drive, right? When you're driving, you can listen to ilm. Some people they listen. They're better at listening. Other people are better at reading, okay? Reading. An hour, 20 minutes, 10 minutes, do something. If someone listens to a podcast 10 minutes a day, which means basically from your home to go do the pickup, or sitting in the line to pick up your kids, right? Right? You're standing online to pick up your kids. Or any of these chores that you have to do. Listen to some ilm. Until the guy says, all the way down. Right? Move your car, okay? Okay? Listen to some ilm. That's the inside joke for the newly married parents. All the way down, okay? Just listen for that. You can learn knowledge. This is how you learn, right? Little by little, little by little. Imam al-Haddad said knowledge is review and consistency. It's review and consistency, that's all it is. So an hour, 20 minutes, 10 minutes. And what is the best knowledge to study? Is to review old material. Some people think I need to read something new because I read this book already. Actually, no. According to Imam al-Haddad, the best knowledge for you to learn is to review something you've already read or learned. To read it again, right? To read it again. Sheikh Rami Ansur, he's the only person in America, we could say, only American who has memorized the main book of Maliki Fiqh Mukhtasar Khalil. It's like this big, basically. This big. He's memorized it, mashallah, cover to cover. Memorized, cover to cover. Huh? Yeah, this is the book of fiqh, right? He's memorized it, okay? So, you have Awalim 101 stuff, Awalim 102, reread it, just reread it until you know it like the back of your hand. This is the best of knowledge, okay? It's not about reading so many books, but it's about actually having memorized almost the content of the books that you did study. The second thing is, mashallah, we here in America, we have so much ni'mah. It's unbelievable how much ni'mah we have. So much ni'mah. If you imagine if you're a French Muslim, you got a lot of problems if you're a French Muslim. Imagine if you're in Germany, a country with a very strong national identity. They don't want foreigners there, right? Angela Merkel says this thing is not working, right? We got a problem with foreigners. Well, we're living in a country, Allah caused us to come to a country, it's all foreigners. No one could say this is the country for one group. No one has a long historical lineage to say, for 600 years we've been this or that. We don't have that here, right? There's constantly populations change. We're in a big ni'mah. How much arrogance is it if we are taking this ni'mah without making any istighfar? Right? The solution for ni'mah is you got to make istighfar. That's how you neutralize it. Make a lot of istighfar. And so this is the dhikr from the Prophet ﷺ, right? Astaghfirullah al-azim alladhi la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum wa atubu ilayh. When you do this, you can say al-hayyul qayyum or you can say al-hayyal qayyum. Either way is correct i'rab. Okay? Astaghfirullah. Okay? So mansoob with the fatha, al-azim alladhi la ilaha illa huwa, and then al-hayya being a sifa of lafdhul jalala. Astaghfirullah العظيم الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم وأتوب إليه. And if you say استغفر الله العظيم الذي لا إله إلا هو and you say الحي القيوم وأتوب إليه, this is also valid and correct. And at the very least, we can't make 100 istighfars a day. At the very least, you could do this at a traffic light. And the best thing, a real dhikr, you should try to do it sitting down without distractions in your house. That's the best of dhikr, right? Sit down without a distraction in your house, okay? Relaxed. And really, Habib Umar puts a lot of emphasis on being relaxed and happy and comfortable when you do your dhikr, right? That means the temperature's fine, the lighting is fine, you're happy, okay? You've eaten, you've drank, you're totally happy, in a good mood, and then you do your dhikr, right? Because this is, you don't say to your, for example, your child, why don't you come spend time with me? Right? And he's at a haggard state, he's hungry, he's tired, how can you enjoy yourself? Right? Dhikr is enjoyment. It's enjoyment, right? So you should be set to go after dinner, you had your cup of tea and do some dhikr. Then salah. Salah, okay. Again, we said it's a myth. Some people really think it's haram for a woman to go pray in the masjid. Some people think like that, it's crazy, right? It's not haram for a sister to go to pray in the masjid. When the Prophet ﷺ talks about the best salah of a woman is in her house. Okay, that's the hadith. Now let's look at the practice. And we, Malikiya, were very much keen on looking at the practice. What was happening? Okay, not just the statement. Because the Prophet said the hadith, and in the time, until the time of Umar's own wife was praying in the masjid, right? So what is the illah therefore? Therefore the illah has to do with safety. And Sheikh Salik even said the same thing when he said about women cannot travel 24 hours. One day, masirata yawm, woman should not travel one day without her mahram. So someone, Maliki woman asked Sheikh Salik, she said, Sheikh, what happens if we need to go somewhere? He said, no, the illah doesn't have to do, it's not about the actual time or distance, it's about safety. The illah for this hadith, the reason the Prophet said this hadith has to do with safety. So if you're on a plane with everyone, right, and there's always like officers everywhere, it's fine, right? If there's a need, right? He's not advocating like someone go on a vacation by themselves, right? But when there's a need, a reasonable situation, or a good thing to go to, Hajj and Umrah, you can go with a group, right? Go into certain things, good things. Go into conferences, go in a group, right? So these types of things, as long as there's no situation of there could be immorality in it, so that's the exception. Likewise in the masajid. Women, they do everything today, right? She do everything today. So if there's a salah, a dhuhr, and I'm out, swing by the masjid, pray in the masjid and continue what are you doing? So the masajid. At least one prayer in the masjid, fajr in the masjid is gold. That's what's gold, right? And this is why fajr in the masjid is actually the most superior of salah in the masjid, is because it forces you to sleep early at night. Fajr in the masjid forces you to shut down the day. And most of the rust of the heart comes from the youth or the adults who are staying up late. What are you doing staying up late? You're watching something, right? You're just watching videos and you spend time on your phone. If you do this too much, it could nullify all the good that you did in the day. And you die with a rusty heart and you won't wake up for Fajr. So Fajr in the masjid forces you to, and we're doing another thing too. Sammy and I are doing another thing. The Arab brothers, the Sudanese and the Arab brothers, they already do a beautiful thing where they bring in food and tea and stuff Sunday morning for Fajr. So we're going to do this thing. And they bring their kids. So they beat us to it. Now we're going to imitate them because they did something good, right? So we're going to copy them. Why should they be doing something good? Well, we can do the same thing, right? So we don't want... They're going to get the reward of their action, and for setting the example, they're going to get the reward for all of us who are going to copy them. We're going to start bringing our boys and kids to the masjid, and if you have, and the whole family, make it a whole family thing, right? Unless you have babies, obviously you can't bring them for Fajr, but if you don't, make it the whole family comes for Fajr. Do you know what this is going to do to people, right? Fajr is such a special time, people don't realize. So this is it. So your salah. And now if you don't do anything in the masjid, at least do 12 rak'ats of nafilah. 2 before Fajr, 4 before Dhuhr, 2 after Dhuhr. There you've already done 8. Right? Then, 2 before Fajr, 4, that's 6, 7, 8. Then Asr has no nafilah. You could do 2 to 4 before Asr. That's a lesser sunnah. Then Maghrib, 2, that's 10. Then Shafa', 2, that's 12. Then Witr is going to top it off. Now, Uzla and Fikr is really combined. If you're very ambitious, you do an hour, 35 minutes. And at the very least, what we do in Dhikr night, 5 minutes. Complete shutdown of everything. You close your eyes and you visualize. This is also known as tasawwur. Tasawwur. Tasawwur comes from the word surah, which is an image. Tasawwur is visualization. You visualize yourself on your deathbed regretting. And what you regret is what you need to remove from your life. Or being happy. What are you happy about? I would be happy that I was very sincere, spent a whole lifetime praying Fajr in the masjid, and I never strayed from the Book of Allah, Salah on the Prophet, and I never made my parents upset. I would feel very confident, not confident, but hopeful in Allah's mercy if I had done those things, right? I know that. On my deathbed, that's what I'm going to be hoping on, so that's what I need to do now, before tomorrow. I need to do it now, okay? You don't need to be 60 to do these things. This is what you realize. In our head, we imagine, when I'm retired, right, then I'm going to be able to do all these things. You need to do all that. You just need to do part of that now. Part of it now, okay? And Habib Omar says it's from the shahwa of the nafs, it's from the false passions of the ego that you tell yourself, I wish I could just leave all this work in dunya and just devote myself to Allah. He said this is a trick of shaitan. It's a trick. You don't need that. You need to keep doing your dunya and just do part of that a day. But be consistent. Be consistent. Then lastly, dhikr. The greatest of dhikr is the Quran. There is no rival to the Book of Allah. 2 pages of Quran a day, or a hizb. How many juz of Quran are there? 30. Each juz is divided into 2 hizb. So a hizb is 10 pages in the Medina Mus'haf. Or a hizb plus the Wird al-Latif and the Ratib al-Shahir. The 2 prophetic awrad, the awrad that are derived directly from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and we need a volunteer to make printouts for the Wird al-Latif. Okay? So who's going to do that? Who's going to volunteer? Oh, the green book. Actually, yeah, the green book is great. Is it even sold anymore?
I don't know, but
we can get it still? Yeah, we should probably do that actually. We should probably buy them in bulk and then just sell them off to people.
small enough that you can take it with you.
Yeah, you could take it with you, you could put it in your purse, you could put the CD in the car.
What book is it?
Huh?
What book is it?
Al-Wird al-Latif, or Ratib al-Shahid. That's called Prophetic Invocations. That's the book that we should have. That's our word of the morning. And the thing is, if you're driving to work, you put the CD in. Follow the CD. Right? Wird al-Latif in the morning, Ratib al-Shahid in the night. I would say it looks like maybe 40 would do it. Okay, yeah, bring those. Yeah, bring those. Yeah. And we'll get 20 of the CDs too. Actually, it's probably online too. You can just put it in your phone in 2 minutes, right?
It's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube.
There's an app called Wird Latif.
With audio?
No, it has
The
Translation.
okay, good. And you all know that how to strip the audio from a YouTube video? YouTube-mp3.org or whatever. There's so many of these websites.
Can someone email all this?
Yeah, we're going to do that, inshallah. Raise your hand if you are not on the Awailim email list. That you should have received this in the email. Raise your hand if you are not on the list. Okay? If you are not on the Awailim email list, then we need to pass the paper around, inshallah, and we'll do that. Someone have a piece of notebook, a paper? Yeah. All right, so these charts are very blessed. These charts that you see here, okay, you got to put up numbers. You got to put up results, right? You got to put up results. You can't just be talk, right? You got to have results. If you want to see results, you got to put in results, and you got to put them in on a regular basis, right? It needs to be every day. If you notice here, the C on each one, actually, for the dhikr, I did it the opposite. C is the hardest one. That was an accident, okay? But if you look at it, for each one of these, if you do the least, the bare minimum, okay? The bare minimum, you're going to be good, you know? You're going to be good. So these are the subjects that we've studied. Ilm, tawbah, salah, uzla, fikr, and dhikr. Today we study another one, which is very heavy, because this involves depriving the nafs of what it loves. The nature of the nafs is that it constantly loves to entertain itself. The nafs is in a constant state of desiring to entertain itself, okay? And that's how coffee shops and stuff are in business. You're bored, okay, what do? Drive through coffee, right? You know, what is it? It's an excess. It's like not really a need. You might need coffee like twice a week because you're really drowsy. But other than that, it's just a little gift for your nafs, right? A little massage for your nafs. Abstinence is teaching us that if we don't have the courage to remove stuff, okay, then there's no room for the growth of our spirituality. Let's take an example. Abdul Qadir al-Jailani, a man came to him and he said to him, make dua, all right? Make dua for my heart. So Abdul Qadir al-Jailani said, there's no point in that. He said, why? He said, because I'm looking at your life, there's no room in your heart for Allah. You are so filled, insisting upon so many things to have for yourself, there's no room, okay? So we need to clear out space. And every once in a while, this is the whole theme of don't be a frog in boiling water, okay? Don't be a frog in boiling water, which means your life is just gonna get more and more and more busy, okay? And your ambitions are gonna increase more and more and more and more until there's no room for any spiritual ambitions left. So every once in a while, you need to stop and you need to empty stuff away, empty stuff out, okay? You have to empty stuff out from your desires. ما قل عمل برز من قلب زاهد ولا كثر عمل برز من قلب راغب. No deed arising from a renouncing heart is small, and no deed arising from an avaricious heart is fruitful. By the word raghib here, he means desirous. Desirous. You desire so many things. So, I mean, there are people out there, you talk to them, you look at their lives, there is no calmness in their life. There's no calmness. What is it? Ambitions, desires, constantly. Working so much. Why are you working so much? I'm busy. Okay. I don't doubt that you're busy, but I do doubt that you have to be busy. I think you made yourself busy with your ambitions. You bought stuff, and now you need to pay it off, right? You purchased stuff, okay? And now you need to work overtime to pay it off. You didn't need that stuff in the first place. It's your avarice and your greed, all right, and your love of dunya that made you do all this stuff. Okay? So we have to constantly be looking at how much dunya are we forcing upon ourselves. We're forcing on ourselves a lot of dunya that we actually don't need. And then we have to work overtime for it. That's why we're busy. Okay? We bought stuff that we don't need. And this is where abstinence comes in. Abstain from excessive purchases that will put you in debt. Abstain from desires in your heart to be like so-and-so. You have people, their entire lives, they measure their lives and take direction in their lives based on what other people are doing. It's like this, right? Keeping up with the Joneses. If they got a picket fence, we have to paint our picket fence. Take the metal fence down and put the wooden fence up. Why? Okay, you got to do it. If so-and-so recently bought a luxury car, and sometimes this is in families. In families. My brother got his wife a luxury car. I have to get my wife a luxury car. She got a luxury SUV. I got to get her a luxury SUV. Which, if you had just said, I can do it, and I want to get it because I want to, there's nothing wrong with that. And if you have wealth, you should. It's an insult to Allah's ni'mah that Allah gives you wealth and you're living like a miskin. No. Like I said a million times, this is not a deen that humiliates the rich and gives preference to the poor just for the sake of poverty. No. If you are just happen to be like that, fine. But if you're doing it out of competition, that's where the problem comes in. The motive. If the motive is competition, there's no blessing in it. Okay? So this here Hikmah says, when you do an amal, if your heart is empty, like a clean white plate, okay? A clean white plate, then whatever you put in there is going to be pronounced, right? But if your heart is like filled with stuff, then whatever you're going to put in there, it's going to dissolve. Like if you go to the best restaurants, there's not that much food in the plate. But what's in the plate was like fresh, cooked well, perfect ingredients, and it's worth more than if you go to a buffet. These buffets, and there are 30 meals. You got the seafood on top of the steak, on top of the chicken. Do you even taste anything anymore? You can't even taste anything. All the flavors are all meshed. Same thing here. If you have an empty space, your heart has to be empty. Then what you put in it counts. Okay? And they call this infinity background, right? An infinity background, okay? If you want your whatever thing to look pronounced, make the background all white and then just put that thing in the middle. That's called an infinity background, it makes it pronounced. But you fill the landscape with junk, you can't even recognize anything good in it. Acceptance of deeds in the divine court occurs only when these deeds are devoid of such calamities. What calamity? Desiring of dunya. On the contrary, the servants upon whom Allah's grace settles and whose egos are purified from love of the world, all their actions, whether pertaining to the religion of the world, are based on sincerity. The aim of such a person is solely Allah, because the world has been expelled from his heart. Hence, a deed rendered by an abstinent one is not insignificant, even if the quantity appears slight. Although his deed may be quantitatively little, it is imbued with a true spirit and is accepted by Allah Most High. One of the things that the Malikiya emphasize a lot is if there's any doubt in a matter, remove it. So their ethos ends up being very simple, right? They don't do a lot of things. Because if there's any doubt in a matter, they remove it completely. So they end up not doing a lot of things. But what they do has a stronger effect. Okay, because the saha, or the plain, is pure. There was a sheikh once, is a big wali of Allah Azza wa Jal, and he was seen talking about investments. He was seen in good clothes. He was seen in a luxury car. And he was in Cairo. And they asked him, Yani, you talk about zuhud. You do all these things. You got a staff, you got investments, you got people investing your money, you drive a luxury car, all these things. How do you have zuhud? He said, the difference between myself and others is that I do these things out of habit, right? It's out of habit, it's a good habit. When you get a lump sum of money, zuhud is not to be dumb. When you get a lump sum of money, it's a good habit to grow that money. Give it to an investor to invest it, right? So he says, I do these things. Yani, we come from the rich families. It's a habit. When we have money, we invest it. We don't just throw it in the bank. We invest it. That's a habit. I'm doing all this out of good habits, not out of desiring dunya. So this is how the awliya, they combined these two. The things we need to do in life and should do in life without letting it affect your heart. You're clean, so clean, right? Why? Because he loves dunya? No, it's a good habit. Everything he buys is nice. The food he buys is fresh. He didn't have junky stuff in his house. Everything was nice in his house. This is why when I told you this story before, the sheikh went to the house, he said, it's not a wali, this is a man of dunya. When he was asked, why you do all this? He says, this is just a habit. This is the habits. This is the habit, good habits. You don't buy cheap stuff. You don't buy cheap food. You clean. You invest your money. You get an education out of habits. It's the way of life, okay? Which they call sunnatul hayat. The sunnah of life. That's how you do things, okay? It's just so that no one thinks that zuhud is to be some dirty, wrinkled clothes, cheap. This stuff is horrible, right? No. Look at Sheikh Nuh Hamim Keller. Look at his work, his books that he produces, right? You don't even want to open it. When you get the book, I just want to put it on the shelf. I want to buy two. One for the shelf and one for it to use, okay? The quality, it cannot be matched. The quality of the work, the pages, the cover, everything about it, right? Why does he do this? Habits, not love of dunya. Habits, good habits, okay? And we need to be an educated jama'ah, a wealthy jama'ah, an intimidating jama'ah, a strong jama'ah. You got Muslims, people talk about Muslims. You see a woman in a hijab driving in a beat up Honda. She can get yelled at, she can get cursed, she can get spit on. But if she's driving, right, in a nicer car, she looks with it, no one's gonna bother her, right? No one's gonna go bother a woman she's driving in like a Mercedes, a hijab in a Mercedes, no one's gonna bother her. But if because she can afford a lawyer, right? But if she's a miskeen in a Honda, beat up old thing, right? And it's not even washed, this is someone who, she's like, someone can abuse that, right? So as a minority, we need these things. ليقل ما تفرح به يقل ما تحزن عليه. All right? Now, how do you live happy? Everyone wants to be happy in life. How do you be happy? Don't be happy by stuff. The hikmah here, if you want your sadness to be little, let your joy be little. If you're happy with stuff, you have dug your own grave of sadness. How? When that stuff gets ruined. If you're so happy that you got a new phone, right? You will be very miserable the moment you drop it, right? If you invested so much to buy a piece of furniture, you're going to be so miserable when your child or your niece or your grandson takes it with the marker, right? And draws on it, okay? So what you're so happy about, you need to actually think about. Well, what is it that gives me a high, right? Because that's what's going to give me a low, all right? And then some people have another thing. They look in the mirror and they're so happy with what they see. These is the dumbest of people. Because it is a guarantee, you're going to be old. You're going to be old. If you're a brother, you might be old and bald, wrinkled. Game over for you. Then when you look in the mirror, you just say, Alhamdulillah, let me use this for some good. Alhamdulillah. But, like Abu Bakr used to say, O nafs, know that you will grow old and you will lose all these ni'mah. Abu Bakr used to be very keen on this. He said, oh, where are the youth so happy with their looks? Let them look at the old people in the masajid. That's who you're going to be. So don't even invest so much and build so much. Unfortunately, some people, they have it so good, they build on these things, right? They build on these things. You build on the fact that people love to be around me, right? Well, what happens when you get old? Well, what happens when the youth, they become more mature and better than you? You're gone. So don't invest on something that's going to go away. Invest on that which stays, right? ما عند الله باق ما عندكم ينفد وما عند الله باق. What you people have, Allah is saying, what you people have, meaning the people of the dunya, is going away. It's going to go away. وما عند الله باق. And that which is with Allah stays. And that is spirituality. Spirituality. Okay? Even knowledge is something, you're going to grow old and forget your knowledge, and someone will come with better knowledge. Or you have knowledge, you solved a problem. After you've solved that problem, it's not a problem anymore. So your knowledge is not needed. Right? There's another problem. Like Salahuddin Ayyubi and his jama'ah. Right? Salahuddin Ayyubi and his jama'ah. They experienced this. How did they make themselves known? Or not make themselves known, what are they known for? Well, they retook Jerusalem, right? So after they retook it, right, by promoting, this concept, after you retook it, the next generation grows up, that's not a problem, right? That's not a problem. So an efficient military is not valuable to them anymore. So Salahuddin's son, Salahuddin Ayyubi, Yusuf ibn Ayyub, his son, was not really into the military or the jihad against the Franks. He didn't care. He grew up and the Franks are already defeated. Right? He grew up and the enemies are routed. So what is he into? Into other things. So when he took the position, one of the first things he did is he deprioritized the military and he prioritized trade. Okay? So even a great accomplishment like that, the glory of it will go away. Unless you did it for Allah Azza wa Jal, then you should not care for the parades, you should not care for the praise of people, you did it for Allah Azza wa Jal. And uzla, which is to stay alone, always reminds you of why you do things. You do it for Allah Azza wa Jal. Okay? Now let's read what he says. In most cases, the cause of man's grief and worry is the loss of worldly objects. The loss of wealth and property is one example. The possession of such objects, on the other hand, produces pleasure and comfort. If anyone wishes to decrease grief and worry, he should decrease his worldly possessions. He will not then possess the things that cause him grief. The greater man's worldly possessions, the greater will be his grief and sorrow. The heart will not find peace. Thus the intelligent man will content himself with necessary requirements and eliminate superfluous possessions. In this way, he acquires the peace and comfort of both worlds. Okay? You want to put yourself in a position, emotionally speaking, right? You want to put yourself in an emotional position that you have nothing to lose. Okay? That you have nothing to lose. All right? This is the emotional position that you need to be in. Okay? Because you could be blackmailed. Destiny, the events of life can blackmail you. All right? If the right path is one way, but requires you to lose something, including a friend, right? Or the happiness of your kid. Okay? What happens to you, you have a belief, your kid doesn't like that belief. What are you going to do? This is a test. Your attachment to your kids is good. But it's not absolute. It's controlled. It's controlled. Really, there was one time a sheikh, a lot of people were so devoted to, right? And this sheikh, he had quirks and he had abuses and whatnot. Personally, wasn't like Baloo would say, a basket of fruits, right? He wasn't a basket of fruits as a person to deal with, but everyone loved him because he guided us, right? But everyone tolerated all that, but as soon as he started making errors in the Aqidah, everyone dropped it. Everyone just dropped it, right? It was amazing. He had at the time there were like 10, 20 people around him, loved him so much. He was a rough, gruff, everyone tolerated all that, right? In the name of love and benefit. But as soon as he took a turn in the matter of beliefs, Aqidah, everyone dropped him, right? So even our attachment has limits. You're not going to go to hell for anyone, right? So it has those limits, and that's some people will say, like the Buddhists will say, don't be attached to anyone. Well, where's the joy of life? if you don't love your kids and really love them passionately and care so much for them, maybe that care is what's going to keep them on the straight path. But when they become their own people and they choose to turn right or left, right, then there's a line, right? Because Allah describes the mu'mineen as, okay, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. Those who believe, they love Allah more. Right? They love Allah far more than they love any human. Abu Bakr's son came to him and he said, Father, I saw you in the battle of Badr. He was kafir and Abu Bakr is Muslim. And I tried to avoid you. Right? Look at what Abu Bakr said. This man is on kufr. He said to him, and I didn't see you, and if I had seen you, I would have fought you. I would have went after you. Right? Our love for Allah Azza wa Jal has no companion, or else that's a type of shirk, right? Not aqeedah shirk, but spiritually, right? And what does Allah Azza wa Jal says? If your families, your wealth, your belongings, your businesses, and all these things, your homes, if all these things are more beloved to you than Allah and His Messenger and striving in His way, right? Then just wait. Okay? And when Allah Azza wa Jal doesn't name the punishment, that's really bad. When Allah just says, just wait, okay? This is the worst punishment. The worst punishment is the unnamed punishment. You don't even know what's coming next, okay? So Allah and His Messenger, and striving in their way. Every family should be involved in the da'wah somehow. You got to be involved in some Islam, a whole family, right? Everyone. And someone who doesn't want to go, right? You want to be part of this family, right? We strive for Allah, we work for Allah Azza wa Jal. This is how you keep the family good and strong, in whatever capacity. Okay. Next, Hikmah says, إن أردت أن لا تعزل فلا تتولى ولاية لا تدوم لك. If you do not want to be dismissed, you don't want to be fired, then do not take charge of a position that will not always be yours. Right? That will not always be yours. Imam al-Haddad was a king. Wallahi, Imam al-Haddad is such a great example. It's such a big ni'mah to have taken him as the PhD subject. Imam al-Haddad, he had something called, what did they call it? The hawta. The hawta, I believe they called it the hawta. And the hawta, what was the hawta? It was part of his house he made public. Part of his, like a public courtyard in his house. So he had his house here, and then some space, and then a section, almost like a little masjid, right in front of his house, right? And that's where he took his majlis. That's where he made his majlis. He would never accept to be the mufti of the land. He never accepted to be an imam of a masjid, because at the time, Shi'is were ruling Yemen. Zaydis were ruling Yemen. Zaydi Shia were ruling Yemen, so he would have to be under their authority. Right? And he said, I'm not going to be under the authority of Shi'is, right? So he took his home to be his masjid, and they describe him as a monarch in his home. His home, that little space was the monarchy. He ruled it, and no one could take it away from him. It's his home. And he curbed the appetite and the temptation to have a bigger space or a bigger thing or whatever. Right? So he was the king because he curbed the appetite. If you have the appetite to be the president of a company, right, then you're in trouble. You can be the president of the company, but if you went there with appetite, then you're going to have a lot of fear to be fired. But if you went there just because I happened to get the promotion, and I don't really, whatever, I got the promotion, okay, then if you get fired, you get fired, right? So this is the thing. If you have the appetite for something, you're going to suffer you're going to have to protect it. This aphorism is an example of the former statement. The kingdom of the world has no true existence of its own. It is transitory and perishable and only sustained by Allah. Do not acquire it in abundance, because you will be confronted with grief of being dismissed from it. Even if you are not dismissed in worldly terms, death will ultimately tear you away from this kingdom. You will then suffer the grief of dismissal. Hence, abstain from the acquisition of this perishable kingdom. Okay? Abstain from this. All right? I think the whole fitna of the presidential election has done a lot of good things for people spiritually. Because people have now imagined a life as refugees or immigrants. Even just imagining it has a lot of benefits spiritually. Make you detached a little bit, right? Makes you a little bit detached. And inshallah, none of that will happen. And it's just a passing test from Allah Azza wa Jal. But it has done a lot of good to people saying, you know what, maybe I don't belong here. Maybe I'll just go. Like, why do I need to be, you know? Yeah. إن رغبتك البدايات زهدتك النهايات. Oh, this is amazing hikmah. إن دعاك إليها ظاهر نهاك عنها باطن. If the beginning of something makes you desirous, the end will make you abstinent. Okay? And if the exterior invited you, the interior will hold you back. And this is a big example for a lot of people who spend 20 years of their life trying to own a home, right? The biggest goal, and this is again one of the things of middle class American brainwashing, is that your goal in life is to own a home. We say owning a home makes sense. We don't say it's your goal in life. See the difference? So an ignorant person would say, okay, no, this is no good, we just rent. No, that's the ignorant person who's not nuanced enough in Islamic spirituality. It never is about the outward, it's always about the motive, right? So we don't say the goal in life, the statement, the goal in life is to own a home, or the goal in the middle of your life is to own a home, right? This statement is false. It doesn't mean home ownership is bad. Home ownership makes more sense. At least you have something to sell, right? Okay? You have something to sell. You're paying rent anyway. You're paying rent or paying your state tax or whatever, your home tax to the township. This isn't the same amount. And then anyway, you keep renting, you can't have a family. Who's going to rent to you with 3-4 kids? Right? So we don't say that to own a home makes no sense. We say it's not our motive in life. If you, people, someone out there, reaches a situation in life that he will never own a home, you shouldn't care. And you're not any less than anyone who does own a home. You're not any less than them. And they're not any better than you. If you have the money, then owning a home makes sense, right? But if that's your goal in life, you're a fool and you're going to be emotionally damaged because you're going to move in, right? And within 2-3 weeks, the taste of having a new home is lost, right? The taste is lost. 2-3-4 weeks. Then the headache starts. All right, you got a new home. Who's going to clean out the gutters? More fees. Who's going to cut the grass? More fees. Okay? Who's gonna, everything has to match. Okay? All these things. It becomes a headache. So this is why the beginning of it looks really nice. Then when they're selling homes in the commercials, they always show the first moment they're walking their new home. They never show like the 15th year, right? Where the sink is falling apart and the ceiling's got stains on it. And then the guy is sitting there and he's got his wife made him a to-do list the size of a book, right? Okay? And he spends Saturday. What are you doing on Saturday? I'm going to the Home Depot, okay? That's how he spends his Saturday, okay? So that's the end result of it, right? So again, what do we say? If you do that because that's the smart thing to do if you're in that situation, right? Then it's blessed. But this is not your goal in life. Okay, this is not your goal in life. Those people who never own a home, they should feel Allah has lifted from me this test, this tribulation. Okay? Okay, so then the next thing here, if the exteriors invite you, the interior holds you back. What does he mean by this? Very important. Something many people take lightly, and those who don't, they're happy in life. Basically, the summary is, right, don't underestimate what your heart is telling you and what truly makes you happy. Okay? What truly makes you happy. Many people, happiness is something they defined with their mind, that if I have X, Y, and Z, I should be happy. When they get to Z, they realize they're not happy, they scold themselves, they yell at themselves, and they force themselves to be happy, and they keep getting more and more miserable. The intelligent one says to himself, am I happy or not? Do I really want this? Right? Yeah, the society tells me I should have it. My own mind tells me I should be doing this. But when I got there, I'm not happy. Right? Turn around. Okay? Don't let society tell you how to be happy. Okay? Because I guarantee you, between you and yourself, right? Between you and yourself, when you sit all alone, with no pressures from someone, without even realizing that you're thinking about this, if you ask a person, what do you really want in life? He says, I would really just like, and many men would say, I really just like a small house by a lake or a river and just go fishing, eat my fish and go to sleep, right? That's it. Most people will say that, right? Most people will say that. But why aren't they living simply then? Then live simply. Why are you chasing after positions? Why are you chasing after more? Only because his ego will not allow his neighbor to be better than him. His ego, all right, take care, bro. His ego will not allow his co-generationists to be better than him. And this is something you have to fight. What's more worthy for you? What is more valuable? To be happy or to be perceived as superior to your co-generationists? The girls of your generation or the boys of your generation. People measure themselves, right, competing with the people of their class, their generation, right? The people of my age, I did better than all of them, right? So you would rather be perceived as being better than all of them and be able to say, I did better than all my classmates and be miserable, than to say, yeah, they did a little bit better than me. I didn't do bad, but they did better, but you're happy. Like, people are making this equation all the time. They are choosing to be miserable and externally perceived to be better, right, than their co-generationists, than to be, okay, in the middle of the pack, but happy. SubhanAllah. Right, SubhanAllah. And one of the things they say about the mu'min, the happiness of a mu'min, is a reflection of Allah's will. So when you find yourself in that comfortable position that you feel totally serene in, that's where Allah wants you to be. Right? That's for the advanced mu'min who's trying in heart, that he should listen to his heart. Right? When you reach serenity, that's where Allah wants you to be. If society or your own mind tells you, climb up another mountain, and you climb that mountain, and you feel happy and you feel like I should be doing this, then do it. As soon as you start to feel miserable about it, know that Allah doesn't want you to go any further. Stop there. What's the proof of this from the Quran? Right? Proof of this from the Quran that the awliya give. Prophet Musa alayhi salam is described in Surah Al-Kahf that he said, I want to see this person of knowledge who was Al-Khadr. He said to his apprentice, who was Yusha ibn Nun, Joshua, son of Nun, he said to him, I will go and meet this man even if I have to walk for an eternity. All right, so Musa is walking fast, and Yusha can't even keep up, right? As Musa, when he has a himma for something, he had a very strong himma, right? Drive. So he's walking, going, traveling. Then what happened? Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Quran, when Moses passed the point that he was supposed to be, then he said, I feel tired. Right? When he passed the point, Allah told him, go where there's two rivers meet, two bodies of water meet. But Musa passed that point. Then Allah Azza wa Jal said, made him feel tired. So when you start feeling miserable about something that you're doing, or tired from it, this is a sign from Allah to you. You've done too much. Now go back a little bit. Push back a little bit. All right? Then Musa realized, then he talked to the boy. He said to the boy, get the fish because I'm tired. Then the boy said, oh, the sign was that the fish came to life and jumped out of the water. Okay? He said, oh. And he looked down and the fish is gone. All right? So we passed our point. Okay? So this is the sign. Some people come up and they say, I have an ambition. Something in myself says I want to do something. Should I do it or not? If it's halal, do it until you start to feel miserable. That's when you know Allah is telling you to stop. Right? Sometimes people feel like I should be advancing. in my job, in my career, in my knowledge. Until it starts to taste bitter. When it starts to taste bitter, then pull back. Then you know you've put too much. Can you have food without salt? You gotta have salt. But once you have too much, right, then you gotta remove some. Okay, you have to remove some. And this is how we have to ask our hearts. And we have to have balance. Okay? And we should not, not everything has a textbook thing to it. Not everything has a textbook thing to it. Okay? إنما جعلها محلا للأغيار ومعدنا لوجود الأكدار تزهيدا لك فيها. Another sign that we've done too much, that Allah Azza wa Jal, He only made the world the place of alterities, which means constant temporary things, and the mine of impurities. So by way of inducing detachment in you toward it. One of the hikam, the great hikam, a very short hikmah of Ibn Atta, which is probably going to come soon, states that Allah Azza wa Jal is only waiting for you to get bored of dunya. So the sign that Allah is telling you enough is enough is when He puts, all right, impurities in your dunya. Okay? This is a sign for you to pull back. Okay? And aghyar, constant change. Constant change. Okay? Constant change making you feel it's pointless. Okay? Prophet Isa bin Maryam, he asked Allah Azza wa Jal, "Oh Allah, show me what happens when dunya leaves the heart of a man." Okay? So Allah told him, "I'll show you." And he was walking, and Prophet Isa sat for a rest. Then he saw a man working so hard, digging, looking for something. Then suddenly the man stopped, leaned on his shovel, threw the shovel, and sat down. Okay? Then suddenly the man got up again and started digging. So then Allah Azza wa Jalla said to Prophet Isa, "Did you see this man?" He said, "Yes." He said, he had desire to find a treasure in the earth. Then I removed the love of dunya from his heart. Okay? Then I placed it back in. So he went to the man and he said, "Oh man, why were you digging? Then you stopped, then you started again." He said, "I was digging and I remembered life is so short. Even if I find a treasure, I won't be able to enjoy it. I'm so old already." So I put the shovel down. Then he said, "Then what made you get up again?" He said, "Then I remembered that I have children, that they can inherit this treasure." Right? And the second intention is better than the first. Right? The second one is selfless. The first one is for his nafs. Yeah. Allah Most High has made the world a place from which man should derive lesson and experience. He also made it an abode of pollution and worries. From the awful and awesome episodes enacted night and day on earth, the intelligent man takes a lesson and gains experience. From the terrible calamities and upheavals happening in the world, man gains admonition. No one is able to attain fulfillment of his wishes and goals. In short, the world is the abode of worry and pollution. In the hardships, trials, tribulations, and experiences of man, there is considerable mercy from Allah Azza wa Jal. As a result of these trials, man, as truly defined, becomes disenchanted from the world. By means of this disinclination, Allah Most High separates him from the carrion that is the world. Carrion is like a dead piece of flesh. The solution to all this is balance. Solution is balance. You can't go without it, and you can't go with it, so what should I do? Strike a balance. And how do I know when to stop? How do you know when to stop putting too much salt? Yeah, and you have a bowl of soup in front of you. You're not going to go look in a book and say, how much salt do I put? How much salt do you put? You put a little salt. You taste it. It needs a little bit more. Put salt. Just right. Or you put some salt. Now it's too much salt. What do? Add some more soup. Right? Now it's perfect. So how is it? By taste. Likewise, in life, you need to attain serenity. Then go about doing everything in life. As soon as your serenity is being disrupted, then that you know that you've done enough. Stop right there. So you end up living balanced. being balanced and be careful of the American really temptation and lure that is telling everyone you have to be the number one at what you do. Right? If you're number one from yourself, alhamdulillah, good for you. But you do not sacrifice your serenity just to be better than others. This is really an American thing. Okay? Every other culture traditionally in the past, in the old world, they honored a balanced person. Someone who's balanced in life. Okay? In the movie 7 Days from Tibet or whatever it's called, okay? Brad Pitt is American. What's his job? What is his goal? Is to climb the mountain, right? To climb like the highest mountain in the world. But then when he meets the Tibetan people, they're all like balanced, okay? And his life is so messed up. His life is so messed up, but he wants to be the number one mountain climber in the world. This is the nature of the American celebrity and the American superstar and the American achiever. He is completely out of balance. Completely out of balance just for the sake of being number one in his small, tiny field. Whether it's bowling, poker, mountain climbing, politics, money. In order to be number one, he sells everything. His family is a mess. Everything is a mess. Just for the sake of being number one in his own little meaningless bubble. Okay? Be mindful of it and avoid it. It's not going to benefit you on Yawm al-Qiyamah. These people, they're all alone. These people, they're all seeking treatment. And by the way, the other day, we talked about treatment. Sometimes, some psychotherapists, it's evolved. It's not as what it used to be. Some of it's actually good and needed, right? Because I remember the other day we talked about it and we said, some disparaging remarks. But actually it's developed. And there's some people who need it. And some people really benefit from it. And it's a trade that is different from tasawwuf. Tasawwuf tries to get a person towards Allah. But some of these therapists, they teach you how to be with your family, how to handle grief, how to handle loss. Yes, tasawwuf does that. Deen itself does that. But some people, some of these therapists, they'll just walk you through it, right? Just walk you through it, okay? And so there is some value, and we shouldn't just throw the whole thing out. It's never smart to just throw the whole thing out, especially these fields are all changing, okay? But all these people, all these number one celebrities, you notice there is always something wrong in their life, all right? They're never normal. If you're a normal, just like an accountant, okay, or whatever, with a family and you're just normal, you'll probably have a better life than these people. You just won't have better highlight moments. Okay, you won't have a highlight moment where there's an auditorium filled with 5,000 people giving you a round of applause and then they give you a medal or a trophy or say you're the number one or they interview you afterwards. You won't have that. But other than that, most middle class people or poor people, they have a more wholesome, balanced life than those who have sold everything to be number one. All right, so you got to be careful from that allure and temptation. Okay. علم أنك لا تقبل النصح المجرد فذوقك من ذواقها ما يسهل عليك وجود فراقها. This is good. This is very good. This hikmah means Allah knows that you don't listen, so He makes you taste it. Right? Allah knows. Sounds like a parent to child, right? You don't listen, okay? How many times I tell you to do this? You don't listen. All right, now taste the punishment. All right, go to your room and no dinner or something like this, okay? But this is basically what He's saying. Allah knows. He's told you, be careful of the dunya. Be careful of the dunya. Be careful of the dunya. The only way you're going to learn to avoid the dunya, you're actually going to avoid the dunya when you have it and it tastes bitter. The first bite is sweet, second bite is sweet, the third bite doesn't even have any taste anymore, and finally the fifth bite is bitter. Okay? So you spit it out and you throw the apple and you don't buy any more of it. Right? This is what He's saying here. You need to experience this bitterness. The Quran, Hadith, and counsel of the learned are adequate for a man devoid of the love of the world and whose intelligence is sound. However, Allah knows that the love of worldly pleasures and pollution is firmly entrenched in the hearts of numerous people. The intelligence of such people is deficient. Okay? The happy one is the one who learns from the pain of others. Right? The fool is the one who has to do it himself and feel the pain. Hence, good counsel alone is not sufficient for them. He gives them a taste of worldly hardships and trials so that they become disillusioned with this carry-on, this filthy world. Okay, abandoning the world therefore becomes a matter of ease. It becomes easy, okay, when you feel the hardships of dunya. There are also such people who fail to gain any lesson from difficulties and hardships. This is the worst of people. The worst of people is he's climbing the mountain of dunya and he's losing his kids. He's losing his own happiness. He's losing his family. And yet insists and persists upon climbing that mountain and being number one in his field. Right? Despite that he's lost his own happiness. Such a person, what are you going to do with such a person? Right? Abu Jahl, forget dunya, the truth of the Prophet ﷺ. Abu Jahl was miserable in his kufr, but refused to submit out of competition with the Bani Hashim, with the Prophet ﷺ. I mean, what worse person? You are already miserable, just give it up and be happy. Refuses. This is why they also call this path of tasawwuf tariq as-sa'ada. It's not that this is a marketing scheme that we're saying, you're going to be happy at the end of this. No, we use happiness as a measure of how much is enough dunya. We actually use happiness as a measuring tool to tell us when to stop, if the Sharia doesn't tell us when to stop, right? Sharia doesn't tell you work 40 hours or 60 or 80 hours, right? It's all halal. But you yourself, your own happiness says, I need to stop at 50. I'm miserable after that, right? Okay. Then he says, there are also such people who fail to gain any lesson from difficulties and hardship. Nevertheless, numerous Muslims do turn toward Allah Azza wa Jal in consequence of the calamities that befall them. Thus, in relation to their former state of degeneration, they progress in the direction of going to Allah Azza wa Jal. If you don't go to Allah Azza wa Jal out of wisdom and intelligence and accepting the advice, you're gonna eventually turn back to Allah, because the hardships of this world will cause you to go back to Allah. The Prophet ﷺ drew a line. He said, this is a man's lifespan. Then he drew vertical lines across it. He drew a horizontal line, then vertical lines. Okay? Then they said, okay, this is the man's lifespan. And the Prophet ﷺ said, this is the first trial he gets. Then the second trial, then the third trial, then the fourth trial, then at the end he dies. And hopefully, if he didn't accept advice the first time, hopefully the first trial will get him to give up dunya. Love of dunya. If the first trial doesn't work, hopefully the second trial will get him to give up love of dunya. If not the second one, hopefully the third one. By living a long life, you will have more trials and you will give up more dunya until you are actually wise and enlightened. The ulama of Andalus used to have a thing. In Andalusia, Qurtuba and these places, the ulama, and probably many countries, but it's said about the ulama of Qurtuba, they used to look at the youth. They used to gaze upon the youth. And they would look at who is tested amongst them and how he reacts to the test. Because whoever gets tested amongst the youth and reacts positively, he's a step ahead of his generation, right? He's the one Allah tested by choice, right? And those are the future imams. What does Allah say about imams? He said, those who have sabr, those who had suffered trials and are patient, they'll be the imams. Because when they got the trial, what happened? They gave up dunya, love of dunya from their heart. So they used to say, we look for the youth who are tested. All the youth are playing around, right? And right around 13, 14, maybe a little bit before that, 15, 16, 17, 18, we start looking. Who will be tested, right? Then all of a sudden you start seeing this person showing up in the lines for Fajr. Right? You start seeing him out of nowhere showing up for Salat al-Isha, the tests, and he reacted well to the test. Then we pick those, like going fishing, we pick that youth because we know he's ready. Love of dunya has left his heart, he's ready for knowledge now. And we teach him and he becomes the future imams. Okay, that's how it works. Okay, so if you are tested, you should be honored. Really. Al-ibtila' Eid al-awliya. All right? And some say al-ibtila ma'idatul awliya. The trial, when a trial comes to a believer, it's a cause of celebration and it's a feast. Why does this wali celebrate when a trial comes his way? Because now he knows Allah is paying attention to me. Allah is paying attention to me and He's removing dunya from my heart. If Allah Azza wa Jal comes and starts removing stuff, okay? Why does Allah ever remove stuff? So He could put something better, right? So He could put something better. Allah is removing stuff from your heart only to prepare you for something that's not going to come tomorrow, right? If you start seeing, like a restaurant that's in business, okay, put temporarily closed, and it's removed all the tables and all the the lights and everything from the inside of the restaurant, what do you say to yourself? I say, wow, it's going to be really good. They're refurnishing the whole thing. Do you ever say to yourself, it's going to be worse? No, it's going to be better, right? No restaurant just doesn't close for business and take everything out, except that they're going to put something better in. So many people don't realize when Allah takes away with wisdom, okay, He will put something back with generosity, something far better. So when you lose, when you are in loss, do not think you will be in loss permanently. That this is my life now, just to sit at home and just cry and just do nothing. No, maybe not now, maybe in 1 month, maybe in 2 months, something else is going to come when you're ready, right? When the field is ready, now something new is going to come. Something better is going to come. So this is how we view trials and tribulations. Right. Is there something? Where? Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How do you reconcile striving for Allah's sake versus how do I know when I'm doing something truly for Allah or to be the best, right? Out of competition? Yes. Uh-huh.
So how do you know when to stop? Sometimes doing something to extent takes sacrifice and time and effort and so on.
Good question.
How do you reconcile that with the desire to do the best in your,
Excellent. Good question. Imam al-Haddad answered this question. The question was, all right, we're talking about not being try not to, you should be motivated to be the best, but at the same time, Allah says, be the best. Allah expects us to, Allah says, be excellent. Do your best, right? And strive hard, sacrifice. So in other words, someone could take this and say, okay, well, I'll just be mediocre. No. How do we know? We know this by asking the question. First of all, Allah Azza wa Jal said, when you do something, you do it to your best. Okay? Now, the answer to the question is, when do I know when to stop? I could work 80 hours a week if I could, right? The answer is, if you are now displacing another virtue, right? That's where you must stop. Okay? If I'm displacing a virtue, another virtue, the Imam al-Haddad says one virtue should never displace another virtue. So what is virtuous? Seeking knowledge is virtuous, right? What is also virtuous? Okay? Doing dhikr is virtuous. What's another virtue? Doing a great job in my job, doing great work is also virtuous. So how do I do it? You do it such that when your work comes to aggress upon your ibadah, that's where you have to stop. Right? That's where you have to stop. Yes, I could achieve in 2 years. Like if we were like, these kuffar out there, they achieve so much in 2 years. Yeah, because he doesn't have to pray. He doesn't have to fast. He doesn't do any of these things. He's not getting married, right? He's also lacking all these things. So we may take us 4 years. It may take us 10 years. But at that 10 years, we have the whole package, right? So yes, we will wait, okay? So the key is, the one virtue must not displace another virtue. I'm smarter than Janice, okay? Janice is working 80 hours a week. I'm working 40 hours a week, okay? But I have, mashallah, beautiful kids. I have dhikr that I do that makes me happy, serene. I'm a tolerable person. Janice is trying to be Steve Jobs, and she's a jerk. She thinks she's Steve Jobs, okay? You see these people, and everyone says, I want to be like Steve Jobs. There's a great saying, if you want to be like the greats, don't emulate their quirks or their bad habits, emulate their work ethic, right? And the work ethic of a believer is very different. We got a lot more to juggle, right? We got a lot more to juggle. So someone says, oh, why can't a Muslim have invented this stuff? He could have, right? Right? He could have, but you should also look at those people and you realize that these people are horrendous to be around. They're probably addicts of some sort. They're on pills. They're on medication, and sicknesses are so common now. Did you notice now they have pet names now? It's not I'm on medication, I'm on meds, right? Or their various sicknesses, they all have short, cute names now because they're so common. They're like pet sicknesses, right? They all have these things. The mu'min, his chief rival is his nafs. His chief rival is his nafs, not the person in the cubicle next door. You must actually conquer this. You must conquer this. Okay, Janice, to get the promotion. What are you going to sell for the promotion? Are you going to sell time with your husband or time with your wife? Time with your Lord? Are you going to sell that? Sell it. But what does Allah say? If you abandon me, then I abandon you. Right? And I leave you at the mercy of what you chose. Surah An-Nisa, verse 115. Okay? If you abandon me and the Muslims, Allah says, if you abandon me, and what does that mean? Some people are so much into their career, we don't see them anymore. They're not even with the Muslims. They don't care about the Muslims anymore. They don't care about the Jama'ah anymore. Okay? What does Allah say? We abandon them. So mosque life, knowledge life. If your nafs says to you, I cannot let them get it, I have to get it, right? Then you have made them your chief rival. You made a big mistake. Your nafs and love of dunya is your chief rival, not them. You might get it later, right? You'll try to get it. So it's like, I'm giving myself this window to devote to my career. At this hour of the day, I'm shutting it off. I don't care what's happened. I'm shutting it off because that's what it's allotted, right? That's what it's allotted, okay? Rent. How much should rent be of your monthly budget? I think something said like your rent should not be between 20 to 30% of your monthly budget is rent, right? Okay, so if I'm making let's say hypothetically, I'm rich, I'm making $10,000 a month. So rent should be like, you could be what, $3,000 to $4,000 or something like that of rent. So if I see a listing for $5,000, I'm not looking at it. Khalas, I have an allotment, and your time is like a pie chart with an allotment. Anything past this amount, I'm not even looking at it. Khalas, I have other things to do, and the mu'min has balance. Okay, so we Muslims, if we fall into the same rat race mentality, and which causes us to lose everything and be on meds like everyone else, what's the difference in our Islam? What is really the difference, right? Okay. And if someone says, sometimes people look at you, right? Right? Or people, you don't like the way you're mentioned in the industry conversation, right? Swallow it. Swallow it. They're not your God, right? Some of us have careers. What's the difference between a career and a job? If you go into work and someone says, I did half your work today, and you're happy, then you have a job, okay? If someone comes in and starting to do your work for you and you get upset, that's a career. Why are you doing my work, right? That's not your job, all right? You go over there and leave me to do my work, right? But no janitor in a school, someone says, hey, I did your floor for you. You're not gonna be like, oh, why'd you do my floor for me? I wanted to sweep it myself. No, you're happy. That's a job, right? And one of the rules of etiquette actually is pretty funny. They say, if you're hanging around with people who have jobs, don't talk about your career, right? This is obnoxious, right? But there is a very big issue in Muslims in America because we're so educated, we'll have careers. You might not like the way your rank or the way people talk about you in the industry talk, right? In the, but that's not what you worship. It's not what you worship. right? So you should never, no one should be able to say anything bad about your work ethic or your work. But you should not covet to be talked about and idolized in the industry. This is gonna make you to be balanced, and chances are, you'll just be a straight line slowly going up. Whereas others, they'll be like this. Yeah, you got up really fast, but your fall is gonna be really bad too, right? But you should just be steady, 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 steady. Like, if you remember, NBIC used to be in a little shack, okay? Little place in not a great area. Then it just kept growing, growing, growing. So someone was talking to one of the brothers here, okay, and he said, I had a criterion. I had one criterion. I didn't care what anyone else was doing. All my criterion was that this year is better than last year. We made an improvement. That the next year should be a slight improvement than last year. So we compete against ourselves, that's it. You don't compete against anyone else, right? Because then someone else is at the driver's. Don't let anyone else drive your train. You drive your own train. All right, so this is needs strong discipline to resist. And some people are more competitive than others, okay? Let's stop here and take a stretch break, bathroom break, make wudu. Subhanakallah, Muhammadik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Only 2 minutes, okay?
Question.
Yeah.
When you said Allah.
Okay? May end up at a certain level, while some of his colleagues are better than him. But the question is, you are at that level, but you're happy. You're at that level and you didn't sacrifice your family. You didn't sacrifice who you are. You didn't sacrifice your beliefs or your principles. Okay? Whereas if you had, yes, you may have been at a higher level, but you would have been miserable. And this is where barakah comes in, and blessings. Blessings. You want to be blessed. The Prophet ﷺ said, oh Allah, whatever you give to us, bless it. Which means I have a little, but it's making me happy. It's better than a lot, but I'm not happy. The oil moguls of the past, the people who first found oil in the ground in America, they have books and movies about them. And again, the majority of them are miserable, right? They sacrifice so much other good to monopolize and control the oil, okay? That oftentimes they died, the richest men and the most miserable men at the same time. So again, how do we balance the ethic of being excellent in our work while doing it right? Is namely that balance, finding that balance. When it impedes upon your ibadah, when you find yourself, you can't do dhikr anymore, or you're not seeking knowledge anymore, or your children are suffering, or your own happiness is suffering, that's a time that you need to pull back a little bit. Okay. Question? Yes?
Apply that to somebody who's a scholar and their work is actually in the realm of
There's no different.
Allah. So if they're sacrificing their family or
No different.
relationships.
I call that dunya in the guise of Islamic work. It's dunya in the guise of Islamic work. We have to be very careful from that, right? What is dunya in the guise of Islamic work? Like anyone doing righteous work, brain surgeons, scholars, all these people. If your so-called dawah is impinging upon the time that you need to be spending with others, that's obligatory on you, then you're actually doing dawah for the motive of ego. There's no other way to say it. Because Imam al-Haddad said a virtue does not override another virtue. If you see a man doing a virtue, sacrificing another virtue, in the moment he sacrifices that virtue, it's out of arrogance and ego. Arrogance and ego. Didn't Allah Azza wa Jal say, be excellent, Allah's beautiful, loves beauty. So I could buy a chandelier for the masjid for $10,000, right? Well, wait a second, there are also poor people here. So I'm going to take from the money that's supposed to go to the poor by saying Allah is beautiful and loves beauty. So what do we say? I have dressed my arrogance and my ego with the Islamic hadith, with a hadith or Islamic clothes, right? Clothes, right? So once that balance is overdone, the person should not say, but I'm doing good. Yes, the deed is good, but the motive is bad. Right? Imam al-Haddad also says, kalimatu haqqin urida biha batil. A true statement, but his motive is bad. Right? It's true, a good deed, but the motive is bad. Iblis, alayhi la'natullah, he approached Prophet Isa bin Maryam, and he said, "Oh Isa, say la ilaha illallah." Prophet Isa gave us a lesson from this, right? He said, kalimatu haqq urida biha batil. You're doing something good, saying something good, but you have a bad intention, right? Why does he want Prophet Isa to say la ilaha illallah? Because if he says it, then Isa just obeyed Satan, right? He obeyed Satan. And if he doesn't say it, then he refused to make dhikrullah. So what did Prophet Isa say? Kalimatu haqq urida biha batil, sa'aquluha walakin laysa ba'dak. He said, I will say it, but not after you. Yani when you leave, then I'll say it. Okay? So good deeds can be dressed up, okay? Or, ego, arrogance, competition can be dressed up in good deeds. And how do we know? Again, when one virtue cancels out another virtue. Okay? You got people working, I remember there was a guy, he was doing classes for the local police. Okay? His mother was also dying in the hospital. Right? And he would spend all day doing sensitivity training for the local police of his township. And his mom's dying in the hospital. Right? So, where are your priorities? So therefore, his voluntary act, right, of sensitivity training, that can wait. It's not part of being a cop, you have to have it. It can wait 2-3 weeks, right? You can just reschedule it. So we say to him, really motivated, you must be motivated by ego. Because as you're saying, I'm serving Allah, Allah also told you to do something else too, right? So the sign of ikhlas is balance. الطي الحقيقي أن تطوى مسافة الدنيا عنك حتى ترى الآخرة أقرب إليك منك. The real journey, what did we just say? The real competition, the real rival is what? Is not anyone or anything or any mountain or any acclaim or any award or any renown. It is what? When the world, the dunya diminishes. Okay? When the world's dimension is rolled away from you so that you see that the hereafter closer to you than your own self. The real competition is not anything other than you versus yourself. Dunya versus akhirah in your heart. You can do it by sticking to regular practices. By sticking to regular practices, you can reach a point where you are engaged in everything everyone else is doing. Okay? But this gets heavier with time. The impact and benefit gets heavier with time, such that you really feel, I am just, like Shafi'i said, a bird flying to the afterlife, only his ankle or his talon is stuck inside the cage. Imam Shafi'i said this about himself. He said, I'm already in the afterlife, but only my talon, my leg is stuck in the dunya. That's how it is. When you do the regularity is more important than the amount. The Prophet ﷺ said, the regularity, the consistency is the best, even if it's little. Okay? So the consistency of these practices. And you don't listen to your nafs. Your nafs is going to say, okay, I did it for a week, what's next? I did it for a month, what's next? No, you don't do that, right? You don't do that. You stick with the same thing for years, okay? You see the same thing for years. And if you come and Allah bestows upon you a relationship with a shaykh, then you simply replace the awrad, from these awrad to the awrad of the shaykh that Allah opened for you to have a relationship with, right? But that's it, okay? You take whatever he gives you. This is almost like Johnson & Johnson first aid kit, okay? Until you get to a doctor. And some people, this suffices them, right? Because these awrad, this is basically what Habib Omar gives. Okay? What Habib Omar, some Quran, some ilm, some awrad. Some time alone. This is what Habib Omar gives. That's the default. And so the default is already advice from a guided scholar, a wali of Allah Azza wa Jalla, nahsabuhu min al-awliya. Okay? You stick with it. And the path to Allah are like the terrains of the earth. Right? The path to Allah is like the terrains of the earth. Sometimes the terrain of the earth is a Caribbean island. And sometimes it's the Mojave Desert. Okay? Sometimes it's the rainforests. Sometimes it's night. Sometimes it's dark. Sometimes it's a rainstorm. You just keep going. Sometimes, oh, this is so good. This is my favorite thing. Other times you feel, it's routine. You just stick to it. We just stick to it. Continue. Don't tell your nafs, don't let your nafs say, okay, you know what, I don't want to do this, I'm going to do something else. Or, is there anything more? There was once someone who gave a class, and the student gave a response. Of course, it wasn't one of our classes. Okay? Student gave a negative review. Right? What was the negative review? They said, the sheikh kept talking about hadith after hadith after hadith, and I was looking for something more spiritual. What a, a'udhu billah, zindiq should be beaten, okay? This statement is almost kufr, right? The statement is like borderline. How could you say that? Then that means you don't even, her concept of spirituality, or his concept of spirituality is something different. There's nothing greater than to be near to Allah and His Messenger ﷺ. This is why some people say, the stories of the Quran are good, but no, it's you who have to change yourself. You have to change yourself. Okay? You have to change yourself. If Allah says these are the best stories, then even if I recite it to you the 100th time, you have to tell yourself there's something about it that I'm missing, or there's more to it. Right? Don't say, the stories of the Quran are good, but these statements are just wrong. You change yourself. Okay? You change yourself. Okay, let's see what the Sharh says here. Karamat that Allah awards to the awliya. Okay? Such as traveling huge distances in a minute. This is called Tayyul Ard. One of the major known karamats that have happened to many awliya is that they take one step in their journey and they have arrived to another country. Right? They arrived 1,000 miles after taking one step. This is a common karama that you read in the books. But he's saying here, okay, this is not the aim of the path of Allah, is to have karamas. What is the aim? Okay? Traversing distances miraculously is not necessarily the trait of the accepted servant. In other words, if someone possesses the ability of traveling huge distances in a minute, it does not follow that he is necessarily accepted as a saint or a wali of Allah Most High. It is quite possible that a man can acquire such powers by exercises even while he is not obedient to the sacred law. A seemingly miraculous deed displayed by an irreligious person is an act that leads that person further astray. Istidraj. The true journey, the true accomplishment or goal, is to wrap up the distance of the world from in front of one's heart. In other words, my covetousness of dunya is gone and I feel that akhirah is right in front of me. Not only to expel the love of the world from the heart, but not to permit it even to pass near to the heart. One should eliminate the love of the world so that the day of judgment appears to be nearer to one than one's own self. Quick side comment. Karamat al-awliya. We call them karamat al-awliya because most karamat happen to awliya. But does having a karama mean someone is a wali? The answer is no. Having a karama means that someone is a sincere mu'min, a sincere believer. And a believer is very different from a wali. The wali has more rights with Allah Azza wa Jal than a mu'min. A wali, if someone offends him, Allah gets involved. A wali, if he makes a dua, Allah answers him. A wali, Allah does not like to harm him, to bring him any harm. Such that the awliya, when they're going to die, they get warnings from Allah. They know when they're going to pass away. Shaykh Muhammad al-Yaqubi said his father, Shaykh Ibrahim al-Yaqubi, brought him 4 weeks before his death and prepared him and said, son, okay, my time is coming soon. This is my plot. This is my money. This is the inheritance. This is how you're going to divide everything. Right? And then 4 weeks later, he passed away. And he was able to discharge all his affairs because Allah Azza wa Jal does not like to bring pain to the awliya. Okay? So karama indicates sincerity of a mu'min. What happens if a karama comes to a sinner? Then it's not a karama. It's istidraj. Istidraj. What happens when a karama comes to a random guy? Like you see a grandma lift a car for a baby. Imam Abu Hanifa discusses this. He says this, we don't call that a karama. We call that qada' hajat. Qada' hajat means fulfilling of needs. Allah fulfills the needs of people. Right? Allah fulfills people's needs. So wilaya, to be a wali, is not defined by karamas. And a wali can have no karamas, and someone could have 1,000 karamas. It doesn't indicate his wilaya. Wilaya is, the sign of wilaya are other things than this. We're not going to go into that now. Other things than this. But the point here is that the goal of the mu'min is that akhirah is very near to him. And dunya is far from him, and he has no... We told you the story before, but we'll say it again. There was a wali, and his face was so filled with nur, subhanallah. And one of the murids said to him, how did you reach this position you're in right now? Of so much sukoon, right? So much nur on his face, so much consistency in his ibadah. Okay? He said, how did you do this? He said, I was a bawab, a doorkeeper for 30 years. So the murid left and he said, subhanallah, I never thought about it. Yeah, bawab, he has to stand at the door, so he has to be very patient, he has to be very vigilant, he has to, do all these things. So maybe he attained that, so he signed up to be a bawab, a doorkeeper. Okay? Then he went back to the wali sometime later to make him proud. And he said, now I too am a doorkeeper. And in the apartments, I don't know how it is in Pakistan or in other countries, but in Egypt, the bawab, this is a story from Egypt, is basically he's at the apartment door, the apartment complex, and he greets people, helps people take the groceries up, goes get their car, parks their car, all right? It's little chores like that. And he gets some money from the people and he lives downstairs. He went and he said, I now too, I'm a bawab. He said, good. He said, yes, so stop by. I'm in such and such an apartment complex. He said, this is not the bawab I'm talking about. He says, I was the doorkeeper of the heart, not allowing dunya to come in. Okay? Not allowing dunya to enter. This is the doorkeeper that we need to be. Okay? Not allowing dunya to enter. Dhikrul maut, constant. Hamza, you had your hand up? Oh, good question. What is istidraj? Istidraj means to blind someone of their misguidance and entrench them in their misguidance through good things. Through good things, such that you harm someone to make a business deal, Allah will make the business deal successful. Right? Because if He made it, this is the worst punishment. That Allah does not want the guidance of someone. He doesn't want someone to be guided. Does Allah do this to everyone? No, only to the stubborn. The stubborn. Allah, and someone says, how could Allah do this? And then how does Allah accept to be guided? To people to be guided if He's misguiding them? No. Don't people want justice? Don't people love justice? Allah's just. If you insist on misguidance, He'll give you misguidance and He'll help you be misguided. Right? This is from the justice of Allah. Allah Azza wa Jal never acts with cruelty. He only acts with justice. Right? And you produced that result. Right? If you don't like the result, it's not Allah's cruelty, it's His justice. Ibn Abi Zayd says in the Risala, in the introduction, he says, when Allah punishes someone, it's by His justice. Right? It's not by cruelty, it's by justice. That's what you did. So people who are stubbornly insisting upon misguidance, then Allah Azza wa Jal gives them success in their misguidance, right? Like, do you think that Dawkins, if he wrote his first book about whatever atheism and various books that he wrote, denouncing religion, if that book was an utter flop and his wife divorced him and he got cancer, he'll be a believer by now, right? Okay? But this is someone so filled with arrogance and stubbornness and insistence that Allah said, okay, if you're that insisting upon it, I'll help you. The book is a bestseller, the man is great, he's a superstar, he's a celebrity atheist, right? He's a celebrity, so he's locked in it.
In one of the interviews he goes, oh God.
Really? SubhanAllah. And still, we don't know who can, at the end of their life, change. Allah knows best, right? But this is an example of istidraj, success that traps you in misguidance, okay? لو أشرق لك نور اليقين لرأيت الآخرة أقرب إليك من أن ترحل إليها ولرأيت محاسن الدنيا قد ظهرت كسفة الفناء عليها. Here's the thing. Imam Ibn Ata'illah is saying here, if the nur of yaqeen enters into your heart, you realize you don't need to travel to the akhirah. It's all coming to you. Some people imagine, okay, we need to travel to Allah, everything needs to change, we need to do all these things, I need to go somewhere else, I need to get out of this bad company that people are around, I need to get out of here, I can't do it here. All this is false, all this is a veil, okay? If Allah wishes to guide you, He can guide you in the same exact spot without you having to change move a single step from where you are or change a single thing about your life. If Allah wishes to guide someone, He'll show him. Just tweak one or two things. SubhanAllah. Sometimes that's how simple it is. Just tweaking one or two things, all of a sudden you're guided, right? If Allah wishes to remove dunya from your heart, you don't need to do anything. Then you realize everything I ever needed is right in front of me. I don't need anything else. Everything I ever wanted, everything that I imagined I needed for life, for happiness, I actually already have it. And I'm wasting it, right? That's what you realize, okay? And I need to think about death. I need to go to a graveyard and spend all night there to think about death. Maybe I need to get cancer. Maybe I need to go to jail to think about death, to do all the whole situation is perfect as it is. Okay? When yaqeen enters, when you realize everything is actually perfect as it is, that's one of the signs that the nur has entered. Right? That's when you have reached serenity, like you should imagine the lake is now still, perfectly still. Now you have to keep it still. Okay? Let's see what the commentator says. Were the light of certitude to shine, you would see the hereafter so near that you cannot move toward it. Okay, you don't need to do anything anymore. Everything is perfectly as it is. Okay? And you would see that the eclipse of extinction had come over the beauties of the world. So I don't like when people try to write like this. This is not Shakespeare. You don't need to write the eclipse of extinction. Who knows what that is, right? This is the age of Twitter. Give me a Shift F7 on this one, right? Give me another synonym here, okay? And this is sometimes, this is not the authors here, this is Victor Danner, okay? Victor Danner. Okay, Allah and His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the thing is, you want to be poetic and you love literature, fine. Literature is a great thing. Everyone should have some literature in their house. We don't want dummies in the masjid, right? We don't want dummies. You should be reading. People should be reading. But when you're giving message to the people, why would you make it so difficult to understand? Make it simple. Deen is for people, right? Make it simple. Okay, so we have to figure out what is the eclipse of extinction. Allah and His Prophet ﷺ have informed us that this world is a transitory abode of falsehood and deception. It's deception. Everything that you desire so badly, okay, when you get it, soon you'll be disappointed with it or bored with it. That's deception. While the next world is everlasting and is the abode of truth. One of my teachers, I remember when we were in Washington, he described heaven, and he said, if you're very hungry and you take that first bite of food, right? In heaven, every bite is like the first bite. So it doesn't taper off. No blessing tapers off in heaven, okay? When you have a steak, by the end of it, you leave some of it because you're not even hungry anymore, right? You don't want it anymore. But he said, in heaven, every bite is like the first bite. If one had firm belief in these truths, and the light of this certitude permeated the heart, enabling one to see that the promises of Allah and His Prophet ﷺ are brighter than the sun, then the next world would be actually present already in the heart. And this is what it means to be a spiritual being. It means that the other world actually manifests itself inside of your heart while you're still alive. This is the awliya. This is how the awliya are. Okay, this is the true reality of the awliya, that the spiritual world that we're all going to after we die, it becomes present in their heart while they're still alive. SubhanAllah, something ajib. Something ajib. Okay. The discernment of reality is the result of the light of certitude, which is inspired in the heart. When it is inspired in the heart, it makes the realities of things conspicuous. Okay. Every Muslim knows that the world is perishable and the next world is everlasting. Every Muslim believes in the promises of Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yet when the light of certitude dawns in the heart, these objects of faith become as visible as the things seen by the physical eyes. The effect of this discernment is that such a man will cast the world behind his back and all his efforts will be for the next world. The inordinate desires of his ego will dissipate and he will treasure time. May Allah bestow this to us. May Allah accept our prayer. Ameen. Now here's something. Some people ask a question. Why is the tariqah taking me so long? Why is it that I'm striving tens of years, but I'm not getting where these sheikhs are describing? There's a hikmah behind that, great hikmah. Number one, Allah loves to see the striving and struggling of a mu'min. That's number one. Number two, maybe Allah has written for you to enjoy certain ni'mas, right? And if you had attained this, you would have zuhud in those ni'mas. That's maybe number one. Number two. Number three, okay, if people attain this degree, attain this type of sweetness and rank, okay, without having solidified the habits needed, you may end up a guy who is no longer functional, right? So maybe it is delayed so that you can cement certain habits within yourself, right? Because if everyone is tasting the sweetness of Iman the way he's describing, then if you're a young man, you might never get married. If you're a young man, you might never go to work. If you're a young man, something might happen, right? You might never do anything. Because khalas, you feel like I've arrived, right? So you might not move. So Allah may delay this sweetness for you so that you can get into certain habits and routines such that when He gives it to you, you continue those habits and routines. And Allah knows best. There's a lot of hikam of why. But to give you an example, in London, Sheikh Babikr Sudani, one time he told us a story, and this is someone who lives with all the habits of a regular man, such that when you look at him, you don't see anything, right? He has kids, he's the principal of an Islamic school, he has a charity, he does a lot of things. So one time he said, I was in a masjid, and I looked and I saw nur coming out of a little room. Then he said, I have to go see what it is. And he went in there and he saw 3 old Bengali men, okay? And they had a practice every day that they took 10,000 beads and poured it out onto a table that was elevated a little bit. Then they spent saying La ilaha illallah and they would push a bead off the table. La ilaha illallah, they push a bead off the table until the table's empty. So they would basically, all 3 of them would divide amongst themselves to say La ilaha illallah 10,000 times between Maghrib and Isha, and this is how they spend the retirement. That's the retirement of a mu'min. We're totally transforming the retirement phase, okay? Retirement is just now changing, adding ibadah and start practicing now. From now, by doing this. His retirement allows you to do more of that. That's how they spent their time. 3 Bengali men in their shriveled up shalwar kameez and white beards, La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, and saw a nur, right? Then he said, when I was there, I was seeing so much nur, right? Almost hurt my eyes, right? This is someone, he's seeing otherworldly things in this life, okay? So this is what he's talking about, right? And if Allah Azza wa Jal bestows us to meet such people who could tell us these stories, and that's enough of a ni'mah. That's a lot of a ni'mah. Some people never even meet that. Mustafa, you had your hand up?
But sometimes, would you agree that sometimes Allah will give you a taste and all you can...
And then, it's not a light switch like I'm here and then I'm there, right? Some people live in New York City. Some people only have seen New York City, right? Some people have been told about New York City. Some people have seen pictures of New York City. This is like a picture of what wilaya looks like, a little mental picture, description, right? And then you may see one of them and he tells you about it. Like, same thing, right? So you may go to New York City for a day and come back. So you say, yeah, I know New York City. I know it. But you don't live there, but I know it, right? So you get a taste of it. Hopefully in Ramadan, when your food is down and your dhikr is up, you may get a taste of it. And I guarantee you, people who just attend Ramadan always change. And no mu'min, his behavior changes except that he tasted some serenity in his heart. There's no one who's going to go into religion for social reasons, right? Because I made friends in the mosque. No, you made friends. That's what your mind tells you. You keep coming back because there's serenity happening here, right? That's why people come to masajid. And I've never seen anyone attend Ramadan well, faithfully, except that they change. They've something entered their heart and they've changed. And this is why Ramadan is a savior, I believe, of the ummah. Ramadan saves the ummah for those who practice it properly, right? Okay?
So how do you practice it properly?
Like you fast, you come, pray Taraweeh, just like everyone else. Like you fast, you pray your Taraweeh, set number of rak'ahs consistently, right? Consistently, attend the functions, just be here. Just being here. When you pray, pray sincerely. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq did not surpass the believers by more salah or more zakah, right? It's but some secret in his heart. So when we do something, do it like everyone else, but with sincerity, you know? الأكوان ظاهرها غرة وباطنها عبرة فالنفس تنظر إلى ظاهر غرتها والقلب ينظر إلى باطن عبرتها. Outwardly, creatures are an illusion. Creation is an illusion. But inwardly, it's an admonition. Which means what? Which means outwardly, it's nothing. But inwardly, it's a lesson. We should learn a lesson. Thus, the soul looks at the illusory exterior, or really he should say the nafs, the ego, looks at the outside, while the heart looks at the inside, which is the admonition, the lesson learned. We said that there is haqq, and then there is la'ib, right? And there's lahu. What is la'ib? Haqq is something true. La'ib is something false that teaches you about something true. And lahu is something false that does not teach you about something true. Okay? So a haqq is what? Like we said, riding the horse is something haqq, like it's a good thing to have. But for example, other sports are batil, it's la'ib. But if it's a sport that teaches you about teamwork, then there's a benefit in it, right? Or a game that they teach in school that teaches you about numbers, or vocabulary, or facts. It's la'ib, but it teaches you something. Then there's lahu, it is meaningless and it doesn't even teach you anything. And these games should be avoided, right? It's lahu, no, it doesn't teach you about anything, okay? There's no actual tangible skill that you're benefiting, okay? So, what he's saying here is the things of the dunya are themselves meaningless, but they have lessons inside of them. There are lessons in them, okay? And the nafs only looks at the outside, but the heart should be looking at the lesson on the inside. This is why you can find two people doing the same exact thing. One's benefiting, one's not. All right, one is benefiting and one is not.
How does one know what that lesson is? How does one know if a certain thing happens, that what lesson should be derived from that?
That's a good question. He should ask the one that has been through it before him. Right? He should ask the one who's been through it before him. Right? And this is where it comes where the text of the Quran and the Sunnah does not give us information. What do? Istishara. Ask the people who've been in that situation or who have done that before. What is the lesson of this? Okay. The soul is ensnared into excessive love of this world by the external beauty and glitter of worldly things. This is why Ibn Khaldun said, the people of the desert advance in religion better than the people of the city. The people of the desert have no dunya to entice them. Okay? Also at the same time, because there's less dunya, they have less wisdom or less knowledge. Okay? It's commonly known that the city people, they have a little bit more thinking than the Bedouin, right? Than the nomads, okay? Because there's so many things in life that they have to learn, okay? And the Bedouin, he's just him and the camels and the goats, and that's it. Consequently, the person in this condition pursues these worldly objects. In this pursuit, man forgets the next world. But the inner realities of these things are an admonition, meaning the result of what's going to happen to him is going to teach him a lesson. While every earthly object is initially beautiful and pleasurable, its ultimate end is distasteful and disgusting. Okay? As an example, consider the beginning and the end of food. When you walk, think about food. When you are hungry and there's a pot on the stove, it smells so good, right? Oh, you're so happy. Now you ate, okay? Then you smell the food again and it smells bad. Do you think the smell really changed in the 20 minutes that you ate? No. Actually, you changed. The body is such that when you're hungry, food smells good. And when you're not hungry, food smells bad, right? The smell of the food in the house didn't change in 20 minutes. But after dinner, everyone's disgusted by the smell of the food. Before dinner, everyone's running downstairs. What's cooking? Okay, that's the households where the women cook. Okay, now unfortunately, people are just ordering takeout for everything. Don't do this. If you make the food in your house, you're making it with love and barakah, and there's going to be benefit in the house. You're constantly ordering takeout, or worse, microwaving some junk that's been in a truck for 22 days, and before that it was in a freezer for 22 months, and then you put it in a microwave to increase the cancerous nature of it, and then peel the plastic. SubhanAllah, this is disgusting, right? This is disgusting. You peel back the plastic. Okay? Horrible. We know for sure these toxins are coming out of this plastic, okay? And into the food. And there's so much preservative in the food, okay? Don't do this, right? I would rather just boil an egg or two made with love than to eat this junk, okay?